I just celebrated my 80th birthday on the 4th of October. It's a significant time for me, coming at the end of a period of engagement and activism within my community. So even though there is a sense of retirement, I'm still engaged and involved. Prior to that, was involved in local government and as well as in the politics of resistance within the Black community. I was a member of a number of organizations working with people to intervene in the lives of our Black community within UK generally. Now I'm looking after the arts and culture of Carnival and trying to develop opportunities or pipelines for creativity and for businesses, for young and aspiring Caribbean and African peoples.
Involved in peaceful resolution of armed conflicts and also looking after environment through reforestation projects, facilitating reforestation projects in degraded forest areas in Ghana, and also actively involved in Black History Month to make sure that the ethos that initiated the Black History Month is upheld throughout the period, and its organizations by people within the communities. That's where I am at the moment. Oh, we have a serious problem of deforestation because in 1983 we had a serious fire in Ghana spreading from the Sahel regions into Ghana, devastated most of our forest reserves. So some of us got involved in regeneration of the forests. And that's what we've been doing. It's an active thing going on in the country, and there is also serious encroachment on forest reserves through illegal mining activities that is creating a havoc on the forest. So reforestation is a very, very, very important initiative in the country. So far, we on our own, we've planted over 8 million trees, getting to 9 million. Oh, over about 11, 12 years period. Was the principal race relations advisor to the Greater London Council, and also the head of the Ethnic Minorities Unit of the Greater London Council. So he held two important positions in London, seeing to that the Race Relations Act, the import of the Race Relations Act, the tenets of the Race Relations Act, as it's applied to local governance, was upheld. That was his main responsibility. So he was the driver behind the whole activity of race awareness and making sure that the local government function, the function of local government in the country, particularly in London, was in conformity with the Race Relations Act, particularly of the 1976 Race Relations Act that we operated under. And he did extremely, extremely well.
These guys were my fellow drivers. He said I was a driver, but they were the fellow drivers who helped me to initiate policies, initiate practices, and events to market that. I think we started really when Ken Livinstone became the mayor of London. Ken recruited people to these equality units, because we had a women's unit, we had an equal opportunities unit, we had industrial enterprise and police unit and others. So we were part of a governmental change within Greater London as a result of Ken Livinstone's initiative. And it started off with the main person being Herman Ouseley, who became Lord Ouseley, and I was his deputy. And when he left, I took over that role. And then, as you know, Margaret Thatcher abolished us. And then we did have to develop successor authorities to carry on the work of the anti-racist initiative in London. So it is a long history, a bit long continuity of engagement and political engagement. And we were very fortunate because we were officers, we were employees, but a lot of the political direction came from the members who were the political appointees, people who were elected as ward councillors onto the 32 London boroughs. And there are certain individuals there who were able to be receptive to the ideas and to the initiatives that we developed as a team. So that was the process by which that happened. There was a struggle to get that, because what happened is that these successor authorities, as well as the boroughs, had to take on responsibility for what was being done by the GLC, responsibility in relation to education, housing, economic development, and so on. And then each authority obviously had their own council, and they developed their own initiatives. Some of us, or most of, yes, not all of us, but most of us, who were then redirected, or what's the word, I can't remember, but we were reappointed to these local authorities. So after the succession authorities ended, I went to Ealing as an officer, and others went on to other things. So there's some continuity among our members within the Ethnic Minorities Unit who went on to do other things.
Called the London Strategic Policy Committee. That succeeded somehow the Greater London Council after it was abolished on April 1st, 1986. And they chose April 1st, 1986. Then some of the radical London authorities moved together, and then
nine of them,
and got together and formed the London Strategic Policy Committee. And there was a unit within that. And then Ansel again headed the race equality policy group. Yes. That's what he headed at the London Strategic Policy Unit. And then we carried out some of the residual work of the Greater London Council, which of course led to the Black History Month.
There were 9 Labour boroughs. They were all Labour controlled boroughs.
Lambeth,
yes. Camden, Haringey,
Southwark,
yes. Was it Brent as well?
Brent.
Some of the basic
Lewisham, Hackney,
Hammersmith
Hammersmith,
and
Fulham.
Yes, it was a post-abolition initiative. Once Thatcher abolished the GLC, Labour-controlled authorities decided that they wanted to continue the work of the GLC. So that is what I had to set up this residual body and set up this unit and reconvene the unit, some of the equality units as well, to continue the work. And that initiative we had. They contributed that money collectively, and we were able to use that to develop the initiative that we started under the Ken Livinstone and the GLC. And then we were very fortunate the opportunity existed to us to continue that. So a lot of discussions were happening. A key element of us was to be able to engage with our community, because physically, wherever we were, our community could come in, meet us. And there was no kind of barriers, and people visited us and made known what happened because we also reached out to our community professionals, our artists, our designers, or individuals who have skills in terms of management, event management, and so on. So therefore, a lot of that initiative was very much rooted in community engagement because that was important for us. Lots of ideas, lots of influences, lots of drivers, personal drivers that drove us to what we want today. And I had a few of those. I had a few of those that led us to a program that not included only the Black History Month, but included several anti-racist initiatives because it was part and parcel of an anti-racist initiative that we followed.
And this anti-racist initiative also included the campaign against apartheid. Apartheid, because apartheid, the basis of apartheid is racism. And London being central to colonialism and imperialism also became an important focal point in the fight against apartheid, and which London played an important role with a permanent picket at the South African embassy that existed for several years. Yes, permanent picket every day that existed. So, and the Greater London Council, because of enlightened leadership, and they declared 1984 anti-apartheid year and also anti-racism year. And that showed the type of leadership, enlightened leadership, that we worked with at the Greater London Council. They were a nice gathering of humanists who cared about humanity, who cared about inequality, who cared about injustice, and they who wanted to rid society of these ills that were holding humanity back. And they were labeled as red and ultra leftists, and so they were labeled, but these were fine, fine human beings. They humanized the local government function. They made a better person of me, because if you are working as an officer, you exercise delegated power. So you have to make sure that you don't abuse that power to deny the human right of any citizen or any human being who deserves it. And that was what was inculcated into us by the leadership and by their own examples also. So we were I consider myself very blessed to have worked with people like Ansel, who has a rich history of working within the communities, has that great sense of duty, great sense of care, and that was brought to bear on our work. He would deploy us into the communities, into conflict areas, and we will go and interact, ask questions, knock doors, and all that. So we were foot soldiers also in the community. We went on our feet. We didn't stay in the offices. He would deploy us into the communities and interact and ask questions and gather information and data and all that, and come and analyze and see what can be done to resolve problems. That was the agency. That was the agency.
Like the African Jubilee Year and other initiatives like that. It was rooted in the community. We weren't officers who were in citadels of power, exercising and carrying on policies and developing policies. Those development of policies and those ideas came from the staff, like himself, and from others, and from our engagement with the community. So Black History Month was an osmosis which developed within the structure of that engagement and that consultation. We didn't have that because I think one of the beauties is that each individual members of my staff were committed to that community engagement, and they spent time outside. So there was no office time. We had a large grant aid budget as a result of Section 137 of the Local Government Act, which gave us the money, millions of pounds, to develop a grant aid budget. And as part of that grant aid budget, we would invite people to submit proposals for funding. And we would go into the community and consult. And we published books and policies as a result of that consultation. We would take initiatives. We looked at all the black councils in London, and we published a portfolio of all the black councillors in London. We engaged with people. As you know, Bernie is one of those people who was a regular visitor to the unit. Yes, of course. Yes. And therefore, that was a concrete example of how we didn't sit in our ivory towers. We were out there in the community.
One important thing that we all have to recognize is that enlightened leadership is very crucial and in local government. And that is what Ken Livinstone provided. And Ken Livinstone was the chair of the Ethnic Minorities Committee. And it showed how seriously he took the issue of racism and the importance of equal opportunity. And his deputy was Cllr, who was also the chair of the police committee of the Greater London Council. So we had that support and that understanding at the leadership level, at the high leadership level.
I think the best way to illustrate what is made is a simple thing. Let's say that because when you, as an officer, you produce a report that goes to a committee for approval, you can have concurrent reports from finance and legal. And the bureaucracy of local government indicates that finance and legal will give you a report on what you are proposing and say what will happen. We said to them, we don't want that. We don't want you to tell us why we can't do it. We want you to tell us how to do it. And a concurrent report from finance and from legal would be an indication of this. Yes, this is how to do it. We don't want to know that this law prevents us from doing that, or this protocol prevents us from doing that. And that simple change in practice, local government practice, it made a big impact in us making decisions that followed through. And as I said, we also had the support of our local councils. In terms of the successor authorities, it was Linda Bellas who chaired it, and chaired the LSPU, and Narendra Makanji, who chaired the Race Equality Group. And these two individual politicians gave us the support that Ken gave us, and it's through them we were able to make Black History Month what it is today.
Another important aspect that I think I have to call on is that we had also access to good legal counsel through the practice of Lord Gifford. Yes, through the practice of Lord Gifford. And Lord Gifford is also credited with doing the calculations for the reparations. And so we were very, very lucky that we had that support, the financial and the legal, to ensure that we were not doing anything that was illegal and anything that would trip any councillor. And that sense of discipline, and we could account for every penny voted. We could account for it. That was the discipline. That is why we got the support.
Black History Month existed in the USA, and the Black communities in London, like the Black Liberation Front and the Panther Movement, recognized and celebrated Black History Month in February. It has a history, it has a connection. with the American Black History Month. But we wanted some of the drivers that led us to make a UK version, as it were very specific to the UK. And I think that has to be recognized. So for me, as a member of the Black Liberation Front, I helped to coordinate Black History Month celebrations in February. So when a particular individual came to me with an idea, it was very, very well received.
It all happened in long time ago, 40 years ago. 40 years ago. He was 40 then. 40 years ago. It happened as a result of a trauma that a mother and the child faced. The mother, coincidentally, was Ansel's secretary. I go to work at the Greater London Council, and I saw her at her desk crying. And I said, "What is the matter?" And she said, "Would you believe it? Last night, I was putting Marcus to bed. And after prayers, as I left the room, he called me back to his bed and asked me, 'Mom, why can't I be white?' She said she was flabbergasted, didn't know how to respond. And she spent the whole night crying, saying that she had failed the son, the 6-year-old son, that she had deliberately named after Marcus Mosiah Garvey. And here was the son questioning his identity. So she said, "I have failed my son." So I said, "No, you haven't failed your son. You haven't. It is rather the institutions of state that have failed your son. The Department of Education, the Inner London Education Authority, the local authorities, the libraries, the schools, the universities, research institutions all over London, the city with its financial power. They have failed your son. But not only your son, every child growing up in this United Kingdom has been failed. And that stirred something up in me that something has to be done. So I am someone who brood and think over things and would like to see solutions. And I tested the ground to see what may have triggered young Marcus to come up with this traumatic questioning of the mother. So my antennas were sharpened, and I was studying and watching and listening to students coming out of tube stations, on buses, and also on school compounds. I will watch them interact. Then I realized that the connection was with Africa was difficult for them because this was a period of the great crisis going on around the world, and particularly with Ethiopia and the what do we call it, the famine and all that, and the images that children were seeing on television were so bad. And the children also can be cruel in school. They can be very, very cruel, you see. And so that ran home, said, okay, it's the whole issue of racism. So it's a challenge to us, our unit. And I discussed this with Ansel, and he encouraged me to put this in writing, and which I did, and then to come up with proposals in order to see what can be done. So we agreed, the unit, we agreed that we were going to organize activities, lectures, historical lectures and concerts in London and across the country, bring in our own psychiatrists, our own psychologists, our own historians, our own medical group sociologists, bring them into the community to expand on the whole issue of racism and create an ambience, resistance to the whole issue of racism. And this is what we did in 1986. We organized the Greater London Council historical lectures and concerts, and that set the ambience. And out of that, we saw that the year 1987, 1988 embraced a lot of historical moments in our life. It marked the 150th anniversary of emancipation. It marked the 100th anniversary of the birth of Marcus Garvey. Then it marked the 25th anniversary of the founding of the Organization of African Unity, and several momentous events. So we put all this together and said that we were going to mark and celebrate Africa, because Africa is the birth of humanity. Africa is the parent of humanity. And that fact has to be recognized and accepted in all schools and the curriculum and all that. That fact has to be accepted. So that is what we did. 40 years on, I don't know how we managed to pull it off, but it was a great, important achievement, which has grown in depth and in character to today.
I confess, I'm certainly the first person to confess, when we planned all of this, I didn't anticipate how it would develop into what it is today. We were energized and we wanted to do it, but we also recognized how easy when you lose power, things like that can dissipate and people can forget. But for some reason, it caught on. Each of the members of the Association of London Authorities, and Conservative and Labour, accepted the proposal and the declaration that we set out to make October Black History Month. And once that was accepted, it just spread like wildfire. I can't explain that. And now what is happening today, I never, to be honest with you, I never anticipated the popularity and the wide expression of that in this country. So looking back in 40 years' time, I know we had passion. I knew we had strength in what we were doing. I knew we had pride in what we were doing. I knew we were determined. And we had some young members of staff who were pushing a lot of these things forward. And it's still some of them, to their enthusiasm, not just in the unit we manage, but in the local authority. The local authorities had members who helped us, the officers of other departments of the GLC who helped. And we have a long list of individuals who are participants and who have made Black History Month what it is today. It's not just Adai and myself. We were just two individuals, but there were lots of others. As I said, we had Linda Bellas as a chair, we had Narendra Makanji, and we had Bernard Wilshire from the ILEA, and we had
Charles Evans
from the Association of London Authorities, and all of these individuals, and as I said, we had the support of our professionals within the local authority, or lawyers, legal people, finance people, and most important, the community. Our community did not oppose anything that we were doing. Sometimes it's very easy to say, no local authority is going to tell our community what to do. It wasn't that. This was a community initiative, community supported initiative. So therefore, perhaps that is the reason why it has grown into what it is today. Is we have to stop mimicking the Americans, because whatever, yes, the whole Black Power movement was very much us recreating and mimicking what happened in the US. Sorry. But therefore, our view was to make something that was distinctive. And in order to make something distinctive for us and relevant for us, we had to situate it within a conceptual underpinning of some of the things that are central to the objective of Black History Month, is that as a recapturing of history and the importance of Africa where now. And you told us, because he brought those ideas to me, which I accepted easily.
You were aware of Cllr G. Woolson's work, which started in 1926 in the US, originally called Negro History Week. And fortunately, I was in the US when it was converted from Negro History Week to Black History Month through an executive action by President Ford in 1976, which marked the 200th anniversary of American independence. So there was a huge celebration across the country, and Black History Month was outdoored during that period. And I was there and I was part of it. So I knew. But coming back to this country, the whole incident was triggered by the trauma faced by young Marcus, who had been named after the Right Honorable Marcus Garvey. And here is someone feeling so down about his race, so asking why I can't be white. And it's a young boy. It's a young boy, 6-year-old. So we had to take consideration of the inspiration. And it's not about Marcus, but every child growing up. So you are thinking about school and the whole. So you have to situate it in October, when the children have just come back from the long vacation. Their minds are fresh. They are not saddled with exams. Midterm will be soon and all that. So they can take instructions. And there's a camaraderie also, because they are sharing experiences. That spirit is there. Then also, we saw that February is too cold. February is too cold and not that environment friendly. So we wanted an ambience which it was mild and also reflected the milieu, the African cultural milieu. Because in Africa, the autumn period, particularly October, is the period of the harvest, where there's plenty. And when the chiefs gather at the capital of the kingdom, and then they take stock of the kingdom, what has happened, and differences are resolved. So we wanted October to be a month, a period of stock taking of the status of Black. We want to examine our lives, Black lives, how the living here is impacting our life. So we have to look at the state of Black Britain. The state of Black Britain. So October is a period of self-examination and reflection, because you cannot just carry on without taking a pause and taking a stock. And also, we felt that October symbolically reflected the spirit and the spiritual essence of diversity. Because humanity and its diversity is what we represent, and this is what the Ethnic Minorities Unit represent. And dealing with the whole issue of racism. We did not bring about the issue of color, classify human beings according to color. We did not do it. This is not an African or what ethnic minority. We were all human beings, but with different hues. But my grandmother, seeing someone coming, whether black and white, sees a human being first, not a color first. So during October, when you take a ride into the countryside and then you walk in the meadows and the valleys and the hills, and you look at the enchanting colors of the canopy of the trees, that reflects what? The richness of diversity. The colors, the yellows, the greens, the black, the yellow, the white, and all that. It's very, very enchanting. So that created a medium.
That autumnal equinox that represented that diversity of color, vegetation, landscape. We felt October was the ideal place for it. Right? And most importantly, we felt October was a celebration of that month. But we were moving towards a celebration throughout the year of a festival, of continuity. Because even though it's a month celebration, it doesn't mean to say it stops, it starts and stops. It's a demonstration of planting a footprint on the landscape of this society and saying, recognize us, celebrate us, develop with us. And we will continue this journey together. Why we choose the symbol of the Sankofa, the Ghanaian bird, had looked back at their history in order to chart the future. And that became our symbol of Black History Month.
The official logo. Yes, the official logo of Black History. Yeah, there's an official logo of Black History Month.
Yeah, but the politics of change, the politics of intervention has to come from within major constituencies, right? Either our community or activists or young people. We are of that generation that perhaps haven't got the kind of energy to drive that agenda forward. We can continue to be inspiration, continue to encourage, but to make it in the way in which it ought to develop has to come from within our community. So that's why it's important that our young people, our activists, our pioneers, everybody embrace it and develop it, because you can develop it in terms of the structure, central government, getting whichever government in power to take it on board, the mayor of London to take all of that on board and to integrate it and make sure it happens. So each borough, each city, each village has to accept and move that forward. Somebody has to drive it. The momentum has to be maintained, and that can only come from activism of our community. 2027.
2027 will mark the 40th anniversary. And we don't want it to pass by without huge, razzmatazz to recognize it, because it is a major historical cultural heritage which we should be proud of. I think we should be proud of. And the one thing that I want to add is the charge that local authorities maybe are not doing enough, or they've taken over the whole tribe of black. They make resources available, and now they are diluting Black History Month, and their focus is on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and all that. And but when these questions are raised, then I ask myself, who are those who take the initiative to organize and generate events in the communities, within the local authorities, within institutions like the banks, like the army, the navy, the air force, the supermarkets, the NHS systems, the transport. When you look at the stations and all that, during Black History Month, people are celebrating. And these are individuals like us who take the initiative. And these people also, particularly in the local government structure, they are officers who do not live in isolation. They live within the communities. And they have taken that initiative to make things happen. So when you believe it, it's like Christmas. So when you believe it, you own it and you do something. But if you have a particular expertise and knowledge, and you find that an event is wanting in some aspects in terms of the content, your responsibility is not to point fingers, but find the organizers of that event, go to them and say, well done for putting on this event. Very well done. I can be of help. I have these skills that I can contribute to make it more better, embracing and enchanting and reflective of us. They will welcome you. That is the responsibility that behoves on all of us. It is us. We are the drivers. And it is our space. Please, it's our space. We have 3 important spaces that have developed. The carnival space that Ansel is still keeping alive with other groups, the Black History Month space, and lately the Windrush space. And these are our spaces that we have to hold as sacred and make sure that they are not encroached, diluted, and disturbed.
I think that in terms of future, in terms of what should happen, is to ensure that those spaces are very clearly defined, strengthened, and people understand what those spaces mean and the importance that they have in not only our heritage, our history, but in terms of our future development, our future presence in the United Kingdom. Because whatever we think, I can think of the old saying we used to have in the 1970s and 80s, come what may, we are here to stay. So the presence and the Black presence is here. They're not going to get rid of us. They're not going to dilute that presence, because you already begin to hear people talking about communities dominating and not seeing enough white faces within a community. People got to acknowledge and recognize that the occupation of those spaces, the occupation of what happened within those spaces, are equal as important, and is part of that retrieving of the past. And retrieving of the past, as you say, is no taboo.
Very, 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 very important, because Black lives matter.
Mhm.
And Black lives matter as Black history matters. During Black history, we say that we pay tribute to our common humanity and celebrate the diversity of our common heritage. That is what we do during Black History Month. And Black History Month is also to humanize Britain. It's to humanize Europe. It's to humanize the world. Because if in 2025, young, talented, athletic Black people plying their trade and to make people happy, people gathered in their thousands in football stadiums, then you have racial slurs and insults. In 2025, it shows the relevance of Black History Month, and also that racism and the color line remains a problem of the 21st century. As W.B. Du Bois said of the 20th century, the 20th century is the problem of the 20th century is the color line. The problem of the 21st century remains a color line. And that is the truth. It remains a color line. And we have to be awake to this fact and this reality. So Black History Month is for us to pause and examine our responsibility as children of Mother Earth that originated from the womb of Africa. That is the truth. That is the truth.
The elimination of the color line.
Yes.
And the integration of us as a community,
yes,
as integral to the society. So in effect, the next 40 years, perhaps we shouldn't have a Black History Month, because we can embed it in the curriculum, embedded in the political systems, embedded in community engagement and development. We see that Black presence being acknowledged, recognized, and occupying a space. We talk about a number of spaces. And I think that's important, that we are living on a landscape, and that landscape has a number of spaces, and we need to occupy all of those spaces in our own right. Not by invitation, or not by some kind of opportunity that we are begging to get in and to occupy that space. That space is ours. Yeah? We're not migrants, and we're not visitors. This is our land, Black History Month. But in terms of the context and the rationale behind why it was established, I would like to see changes in terms of that. But yes, it can continue to become a celebration, a recognition, an acknowledgement for that. But has to be, with that, embedded throughout the whole of the society.
And that depends on you. And the pressure, yes, that's, if you live in a barrel, you live in a barrel, right? And you have an MP, you have a councillor, engage them that this important historical epoch has come. So what do we do? It depends on us and our advocacy.